Hey, it's Roger. I'm back, and this is the final video in the series covering the Azure Virtual WAN configuration in the Azure Sandbox. I'm going to do a quick code walkthrough, highlighting some of the stuff that I talk about in the documentation. So the first thing the documentation references is the Bootstrap script for this configuration. That's a really simple one. So this particular bootstrap looks pretty much like the other ones you've seen. I go out and I grab some settings from the state files for both VNet Shared and VNet App. I do a check here to make sure that you've copied these certificate files down so that you those are dependent, those certificate files are required to complete the configuration. So I do a quick check to make sure that they're there and that you copied them into the same folder that Bootstrap is in. And it looks like I basically make a modification here to the root cert, the self-signed root cert, and I'm taking some extraneous data out of it that caused some issues when I tried to import that certificate into Azure. So let's go run these and see what these actually do. So the first thing I do is we do a tail on that. So let's go view our terminal. And the cert that we're working with is this guy. So let's see what this command actually does. Let's do a tail-n+2 followed by that certificate. So I see exactly what's going on here. So if you just cat that certificate, right? If you cat, you'll see that the first line is begin certificate and the last line is end certificate. So when we run that tail command, it strips off the begin certificate line, and then we pipe that into the next command, the output of that into the next command, which, let's see here, Bootstrap is head -n-1. But what I don't want to do is output that. So what we're doing is we're generating a new public root self-signed certificate by stripping out those extraneous begin certificate and end certificate lines. So this file here, this public underscore cert underscore data, that's actually generated by Bootstrap by modifying that original certificate file that we generated in our client environment. So here's where we go get our data from VNet Shared. So we're referencing the state file for VNet Shared, and we're pulling output variables from it and populating environment variables using those. Same thing for VNet App. We've got grab a couple things from the state file for VNet App, so that simplifies our configuration. So then all we really have to do is grab some user input on the address prefix that we want for the VNet Hub and also for the address pool for the point-to-site VPN gateway clients. and I construct a virtual networks, a piece of JSON that basically includes our virtual networks, which then gets pumped into this variable in terraform.tfvars. And that's it. So if I look at terraform.tfvars, there's that JSON that I construct that has basically a list of the virtual network IDs associated with VNet Shared and VNet App, so that I can create connections to my vWAN hub to everything that's in that virtual networks list. So that is Bootstrap. And then the documentation goes through the Terraform code for vWAN, which is located in this file, 020-network.tf. So let's go have a look at that. So first thing I do in this configuration is generate a random ID that I'll use for my vWAN. And then I provision the vWAN using that random ID. Really straightforward stuff. And then I'm also going to generate a random name for our vWAN hub. And then I create the vWAN hub here. And that's linked to the vWAN that I provisioned above in this line 23. Okay. So we've got a vWAN, we've got a vWAN hub, and then I loop through all of those virtual networks in that list, and I create a connection from the vWAN hub to those virtual networks. And that is VNet Shared and VNet App. Then we have a VPN server configuration that we have to create, and that's where we go and grab the public certificate that we generated with that head and tail command earlier in Bootstrap. Now, the original certificate was actually generated in my client environment as a self-signed certificate, and then we just kind of like fixed it up. Great. And then we create our point to site gateway in the hub. Okay. So the hub that it's linked to is here. We reference the VPN server configuration resource that we created above that I just showed you. We go with a single scale unit since it's just a dev test environment. We configure the DNS servers to be the same as our VNet. And so the first one is ADDS1, which is our domain controller, also functioning as an AD integrated DNS server. And then the second one is the Azure, the address for Azure DNS. And the connection configuration, which is basically sets up the client address pool. And that's it. That's the code used to enable Azure Virtual WAN connectivity to the sandbox using a point-to-site VPN gateway. And that's the end of this video series. Thanks, everybody.